There was a moment when the world stopped breathing. A single frame, a single sacrifice, and we all knew it would never be the same again. We watched heroes fade into memory, promises kept in silence, echoes of battles that once shook the very core of our imaginations. The MCU reached its crescendo, and in that instant, something unspeakable happened. It ended without saying goodbye, the lights dimmed, the portals closed, and what followed was not rebirth, but residue. Fragmented tales, hollow imitations, bright colors painted over fading cracks. We kept watching, not because we believed, but because we hoped belief might return. But every step forward felt like walking through someone else's dream. What once felt destined now feels directionless. They built a myth and then tried to outlive it. They tore the stars from their skies and scattered them into a void that forgot why they shined in the first place. Heroes became placeholders, stakes became soft, and emotion became an afterthought. The soul of the story was traded for continuity, and we felt it, deep in the silence between each line of dialogue. In the weightless deaths, in the jokes that echoed into nothing, we remembered how it used to feel. The trembling anticipation, the heartbreak, the thunder of applause that erupted when stories truly mattered. And now, we remember more than we feel, and that is the quietest kind of loss. But maybe, in the stillness, there's a chance to see clearly. To name the thing no one wants to admit. That Endgame wasn't just the end of a phase, it was the end of a legacy. And what came after, no matter how loud, no matter how wide, could not fill that silence. Not without remembering what it was that made us believe in the first place. In this video, we uncover the truth behind the illusion. We explore why the MCU secretly ended with Endgame, and why everything that followed feels like fan fiction wrapped in gold. We'll break down the stories, the shifts, the losses, and the longing, and ask the question no one dares to say out loud. What if the greatest story ever told already said goodbye? There was a time when every Marvel film felt like a sacred chapter in a story, too grand for any one screen to contain. Each scene carried gravity, each choice carried weight, each pause in the action felt like the breath before a storm. The timeline was alive, pulsing, branching, collapsing, rebuilding itself with every sacrifice made and every world saved. And at the center of it all stood Endgame, not as a conclusion, but as a monument. A moment so massive that everything after began to feel like echoes. We watched gods fall, legends rise, and destinies unfold in ways that stitched together a saga we never thought would end. But then it did, quietly, without saying so. The credits rolled, the portal closed, and what came next felt off. There were still explosions, still costumes, still cosmic stakes, but the soul was thinner. The threads were loose, the urgency absent, as though the storytellers forgot where they left their heart. We followed along, curious, hopeful, unsure if this was still the same universe, or a reflection of it in a cracked mirror. The characters moved, but the world no longer did. Phase 4 marched forward like a parade, missing its drummer. One division teased mystery but never committed to depth. The Falcon carried the shield, but not the soul. Loki's timelines multiplied, while meaning fragmented. And somewhere in the background, the echoes of Tony and Steve haunted every frame, reminding us of what it used to feel like to care, to believe, to know. It's not that Marvel stopped making movies, it's that they stopped making moments. Endgame wasn't just an ending, it was a seal, a final heartbeat in a story that had earned its silence. Everything after has felt like stories told around a campfire, long after the heroes have gone home. Bright, loud, colorful, but cold and hollow. And maybe that's what keeps us watching. That desperate hope that the next story will matter again. That maybe the magic is just waiting to return. That maybe the MCU didn't end with Endgame, but simply paused, waiting for us to notice it never truly came back. We were promised evolution, but what we got felt like regression disguised in spectacle. Characters once grounded in pain and purpose were stretched thin across multiverses and alternate timelines that gave them nothing new to fight for. Everything began to feel temporary, like none of it mattered, like death was a suggestion and time was just a trick. The Infinity Stones once ruled fate. Now variants bounce between realities, like children skipping stones on a dead sea. There's a kind of grief that follows the end of something beautiful. Not a loud kind, not immediate, but slow, creeping, silent. Like waking up and realizing you don't love the thing you once obsessed over. Not because it betrayed you, but because it outgrew the very soul you clung to. Endgame wasn't just a finale, it was a farewell. And instead of mourning it, the MCU sprinted ahead like a child, too afraid to sit in silence. Too scared to admit the silence might speak louder than any scene they could conjure next. So they gave us more. But more never meant better. We watched heroes pass their mantles without weight, watched legacies dissolve into templates, watched iconography replace intimacy. We watched Black Widow fade, T'Challa vanish, Iron Man rest, but the world they left behind didn't mourn them properly. It just moved on, and that hurts. Not because stories can't continue, but because they should, with purpose, with respect, with resonance. Instead, we were fed timelines and cameos and references. Distractions to fill the silence left behind, as if the heart of the MCU could be outsourced to nostalgia. But it can't, because what made Marvel matter wasn't the suits or the stones or the spectacle. It was the quiet moments, the sacrifices, the trembling hands before a fight, the tears we never expected to shed for people we once thought were invincible. And still, for a brief moment, there was magic. A reminder that this world once held gods and ghosts and genius side by side. The portals opening in Endgame, the hammer lifting in the storm, the dance between Natasha and Clint over who would die for the others. Those moments froze time, and we felt it in our bones, in our breath. Because this wasn't just cinema, this was communion. Between audience and myth, between creators and believers. We didn't just watch these stories, we lived inside them. They taught us about grief, about power, about responsibility and redemption. And they did it without ever needing to scream. There was poetry in how it ended, in how Steve returned the stones, how Tony's fingers snapped destiny itself, how Thor found peace in loss, how Peter shook with the weight of goodbye. These weren't just character arcs, they were full-circle truths, earned through time, etched in pain. And we honored that. We applauded, we wept. We stood in silence as the credits rolled, knowing this chapter was done, knowing it could never be repeated, only remembered, only revered. The MCU in that moment became something untouchable. But that's what makes what followed so difficult. Because when you've touched myth, everything else feels mortal. And mortals can't carry what gods once held, not without cracking under the weight. Marvel had everything. The trust of a generation, the admiration of critics, the loyalty of fans who gave over a decade of their lives. And instead of honoring that, they fractured it, diluted it, broke it apart and scattered it across a multiverse no one asked for. They forgot that endings matter, that letting go is sacred, that not every story needs to go on just because it can, because the more you stretch it, the thinner it gets, until what's left is transparent, flimsy, forgettable. And that's where we are now. The tragedy isn't just in the decline, it's in the disbelief, the refusal to see that something has changed, that the applause has faded, that the formula is tired. It's in the desperate expansion, the endless content, the refusal to pause and listen to what fans are no longer saying. They're no longer cheering, they're nodding, politely. Out of obligation, they're watching because they feel they should, not because they feel anything. The tragedy isn't that the MCU ended with Endgame, it's that Marvel didn't realize it did, and so they keep going, chasing shadows, forgetting that shadows only exist when there's light, and the light, once bright and blazing, has dimmed, not because we turned away, but because it burned itself out. This isn't a eulogy, it's a recognition, a reckoning with what was, and what could still be. Because if the MCU truly ended with Endgame, then what we need isn't revival, it's rebirth. Something that doesn't imitate the past, but honors it by daring to be different. We don't need more heroes, we need meaning. We need moments that feel written in blood, not branded by studios. We need less content, more craft, less noise, more heart. We need storytellers, unafraid to sit in the silence Endgame left behind, and find something new to say. Because the real power of the MCU wasn't its characters, it was its connection. It was the way we saw ourselves in gods, the way sacrifice felt real, the way a line like "I am Iron Man" could make an entire theater forget how to breathe. It's not too late, but it will be. If Marvel doesn't listen, if they keep chasing nostalgia instead of truth, if they keep mistaking spectacle for soul, we're still here. But we're not waiting forever, not for something that already said goodbye. Because Endgame wasn't just the end of a story, it was the end of an era, and everything since has felt like an afterthought. Not because it lacked effort, but because it lacked understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the curtain fall.